Hello, everybody. Welcome to SASA's monthly book club discussion. Today, we're joined by author Hannah Lynn, and we are going to talk about her new book, Daughters of Olympus. I am so excited to dive in. But just before we do, we are going to talk about SASA a little bit and then dive straight in. Welcome, Hannah.
Thank you. I'm so pleased to be back here. So thank you very much for having me here again.
Cool. All right, here we go. Alrighty, as I mentioned, our book club today is with Hannah Lynn, and we're talking about her book, Daughters of Olympus. SASA is a nonprofit organization whose mission is to promote the study of the ancient world and engage with our human deeper paths. So we do this through grassroots movements such as outreach, collaboration, public scholarship, connecting with other scholars and students who love ancient studies to bring more awareness to this awesome topic. We are pretty much everywhere: Facebook, Twitch, X, LinkedIn. We even have a Discord channel. So if you are interested in ancient studies, please join us on our social sites. Our live event protocol, we are live on multiple platforms, and everybody is welcome to post questions or comments in the chat. And we'd love to answer those. Just be kind and respectful, listen and ask thoughtful questions, and then be patient with the technology. There's a delay on my end, so just please be patient with us if that starts to go a little wonky. And just most of all, have fun. If you miss any of the recording or you want to share it with anybody that you know, our live the live recording will be available on YouTube pretty much immediately after the event is over for you guys to share as well. And then if you enjoy SASA's recurring live events, please consider becoming a donor and helping further our mission and keep it going. And that is it. So let's dive straight into the book club. I cannot wait.
Amazing.
So the first question I have is, first of all, in your own words, describe what Daughters of Olympus is about.
So Daughters of Olympus is a Persephone or Cora and Demeter retelling. So it goes through the well-known myth of Hades and Persephone, but it is from the point of view of Cora, Persephone, and her mother, Demeter. So it is focusing on their relationships before this happens, a long time before, all the stuff that Demeter has to go through, and then all the way through to sort of the part that is more well known about the abduction. And I'm not sure that I gave it the greatest introduction there, but yes, that is the premise of the story.
Yes, no, I think that's great. So my first question is, it goes along with that actually. So it not only touches on the familiar stories of Demeter and Kore or Persephone, but you weave in lesser known aspects of their lives, especially with Demeter. What assumptions did you have going into the story that were challenged by your research? Like, did you know all this stuff going in, or did you find this stuff?
Can I go? So if I sort of talk about why I wanted to write it first, would that be all right? Because I think that would lead into it. Because I am a mother with one daughter, and I have suffered with anxiety for decades, and that became a lot worse when I had my daughter. And so I would see these versions of Demeter being villainized for being this overbearing mother. And I would just think, but she's just trying to keep her child safe. Like, I get that. I get the overbearing, anxiety-riddled mother. So I really wanted to write her from that viewpoint, so we could see what she went through to cause this anxiety. And one thing that really surprised me was how much she went through, because I was aware of elements, of Cora's conception, and such. So I knew reasons for the anxiety, but when I started reading behind all the stories, there is so much that goddess went through. Like, yeah, she deserves some lenience on it. So I was surprised by how much she had gone through. I was also surprised by the number of other children that she had as well.
Too. Yeah.
Because that's like Demeter and Persephone, and you're like, oh, hold on. There's a whole other list there. Let's add them in.
A huge list, actually.
Yeah.
And I was, so you actually had me looking up like all these other children that she had and like the stories behind them and stuff. So well done there. Cause I was just like, what?
I know. And obviously writing the Poseidon scene and the birth of that particular child, like that's taking writing to a different level for me. You're giving somebody for
that was
for those
hard.
of you that it was some interesting scenes that happened there. But yeah, that was definitely something I was not aware of before I went into researching this.
For sure. Yeah. And I really loved that you did all of that you painted this clear picture. Cause like you said, like we're all familiar with the abduction of Persephone, and like everything that happens with that. And I think it's even well known that Hecate played a part in finding her for Demeter too, to a certain extent. But like all of the backstory, like that you wove in was just mind-blowing for me. And really an awesome experience to get that backstory. I'm a mom of 3, so I get the anxiety about like every little thing. It's like, no, don't do that. You're gonna fall down and hurt yourself or die, or
absolutely
twirl around at the top of the stairs, like
all of it just fills me like
all of it. So
it is. So,
okay. So you already answered my second question that I had. Which was what drew you to the mythologies. Okay, so in Daughters of Olympus, you portray Demeter's story of grief beginning long before she loses Persephone. And I guess you kind of have already answered this question too. But did you have any kind of clue as to like, because her story is very much one of kind of grief and trauma.
Yes.
Which you did say that you knew a little bit about going in, but like, were you shocked by
absolutely
her entire story?
Yeah, it was. And it's one of those things that I also really wanted to get across, how different people deal with grief differently. That they both handle grief in this book, but they go about it very different ways. And it's always important to me in my books to show, look, there's different ways for everybody that they go through. Everybody handles things differently. Everybody experiences things differently. And that was a hugely important aspect in writing this book, is I wanted to show how the same situations are viewed differently depending on whose point of view it is in those situations. It's your experience, your past histories that determine how you are going to respond to a certain situation. So, losing the love of your life, who you'd known for one evening, to some people would be something they could pick themselves up from. But for others, that might not be the case. And so I really wanted to have those different handlings of grief and the different forms in which it came, because there was also grief from the loss of trust with her siblings. You know, that's grieving those relationships that she had been so excited and so desperate for. You know, that's another kind of grief, to lose people in a way that isn't physical, but has happened nonetheless. So yeah, I wanted to show everything she had suffered to build this character.
I also really liked how you portrayed the generational trauma and the cycle of that and her relationship with Corey. You know, Corey didn't quite get it, you know, like she interpreted it through her own lens of inexperience and youth, and shelteredness, which is very valid. And I really loved how you built that relationship and kind of foreshadowed what was going to happen. Because I think a lot of times Corey is often portrayed as just like this really naive, really innocent, just like frolicking through the fields with the flowers type of person, you know. But
yeah,
I loved that you showed her a more mature, you know, aspect and a more grounded kind of individual than what we typically think of. So I really liked that, and how she was dealing with her mother's trauma, you know. And it was just a great dynamic, and I really, really appreciated delving into that, because that is not a hard, I mean, that's not an easy thing to portray well.
It wasn't a light topic, but like you said about the generational trauma, I think we are aware of it now more than perhaps at other times, but it is something that affects everybody to some degree. You do bring down influence from what has been around you, and so that was really important for her to be affected, but also in some ways to physically fight against that, you know, and to not want to go down those same routes, as it would have been so possible for her to choose to stay that naive girl, you know, to that option. But realistically, you know, she was surrounded by her mother's grief. That wasn't going to be the possible for her to stay that naive, in my opinion.
I agree. Yeah. And 100% agree. Let's see. Okay, so I kind of answered my own question. My own question was, Corey is often portrayed as a naive, sheltered girl before she's back in the 80s. What new insights did you learn about their relationship in your research? And what about that did you want to portray to your readers in your retelling? So was there something like in the mythology itself that you wanted to portray, besides the generational trauma piece, or Corey actually being
and the effects of the siblings? Like I said, the siblings were unknown to me before, so I wanted to include those as well. And you know, with having a mortal sibling, or mortal siblings even,
that's so interesting that they're mortal. Like because I always thought like, oh, it's a demigod, you know, at least they'll live for a long time, or you know, a god and a god is typically you get a god
just full on god.
Right. And so that was so fascinating to me. And that's actually where most of my Googling went, was like, wait, how is it possible for a god and a god to have a non-god? That was really interesting.
Recessive god genes in there showing up, aren't they? But I just thought, again, because she had these siblings and she had experienced that kind of loss, again, that frolicking girl go with flowers through the meadow just didn't hit right for me. And so I needed to give her more than that.
Yeah. What was there a historical or mythological basis for her love interest? I did some Googling around. No. So what was the because I loved all of that. I was like, oh yes, she gets her own arc. This is so amazing. What inspired you to add that?
Well, so I was fed up of the romanticizing of the kidnapping, right? The kidnapping. And I'll talk a little bit more about Hades, if that's all right, and my version of Hades, if you're okay with that, because I like talking about Hades.
Yeah. I think absolutely.
Are we down to do that? We're down. Hold on, lost where I'm going. Okay, so I remembered, sorry. Yeah, so I was not okay with this is so romantic. He's kidnapped me. And I wanted her to have a love interest before, because feasibly, for that many millennia, you're going to tell me that there's not one person that she develops feelings for. Like, I'm sorry, no, that's gonna happen. And so as for the route I went down, because it is a sapphic love story, I was saying this at a bookshop. I was at this wonderful bookshop up in the north of England called the Queerish Bookshop, and they were like, why did you go down that route? And I was just like, well, I was just writing the scene, and then it was a woman. I was like, that's all that happened, really. It was like, oh, okay, yeah, in a river, works for me, works for her, because this is how it's been written, so that's what we're going with. So yeah, there wasn't any historical evidence sort of behind that, but I do think that it is time that there were some good sapphic love stories with these women in Greek mythology. They deserve a place in there. So yeah, I am happy that was how it ended up when I wrote it.
I agree. And I'm just going to put the plug in that if you wanted to do like a sapphic romance with like maybe the goddess Artemis or something, out there, she's always with this group of nymph women and they're always doing stuff. And I'm just saying, that would be awesome.
Oh, I do actually have a book with my publishers called Women of Artemis, but I'm afraid it's not that. It's not.
That still sounds interesting, though. Just the title.
Hopefully.
Like Artemis is my favorite Greek goddess, so anything remotely.
Okay. I do like Artemis, but there's some pretty harsh stuff there with her that's like, and like, oh, taken aback by that. That shocked me a few times, definitely.
She's got some complexities too. But so talk about Hades a little bit. So your version of Hades, I really liked it, but I also feel like Hades is often portrayed as kind of like the underdog god. Like he's just kind of like tossed to the side, like Hades, we'll just give him this crappy little scrap of land here. But I really liked how you world built with the underworld and like his job and the stresses that he was under, especially with Demeter and the destruction she was causing, and like all these souls, this influx of souls to the underworld, and the strain that was putting on Hades in the underworld. That was really great. That's an aspect of this entire myth that I don't think most people really think about. Like Demeter was killing a lot of people here.
No, but like, that was a thought for me. And like he is the ruler of the underworld. And the vision I had for Hades is, there are so many gorgeous, brooding, dark Hades out there, aren't there? That, people's vision is this. And for me, there were a couple of things that were tantamount in building this version of Hades. One of them was that Zeus had, in his mind, given permission for this marriage, right? So when Hades kidnapped her, he wasn't, okay, kidnapping her from a field's not a great way to go, but he thought she had some knowledge that this was going to happen, that he was going to go, oh, I'm going to come grab you down to the underworld type thing. So one, he assumed that was going to happen. So there's a naivety in his relationship with people there to think that even if you assume that's going to happen, kidnapping them is an okay way to go. You know, that's wrong. But also the other thing was that obviously when Zeus defeated the Titans and they were dividing up the sea, the underworld, and the sky, he tricked the others, and you know, he took the sky. That was the one he wanted. And in my mind, Hades was just like, do you know what? I'm taking the underworld for a quiet life. You know, my brothers are hugely tempestuous. I don't want any more wars, any more fightings. I will just take the underworld. I will go down there for a quiet life. I will do my job. Everything will be good. And so that was the kind of vision I had, was him being against that kind of conflict, and really just wanting things to work and to go straight forward, and the underworld to be moving the way it should, and Core to be his wife the way he thought she would. And so that was the kind of Hades that I had built. I had thought I had written a very unsexy Hades, and yet apparently the reviews disagree.
I liked him a lot. I liked his little awkwardness, his little social anxiety. I thought it was endearing. And like, he was a strong character too, though, because like, he did care about her.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a little self-centered there at the beginning, you know, but he has, you gave him a clear redemption arc, and I really liked that, how everything played in with the bigger picture of, you know, the strain on the underworld, and then, you know, Corey kind of coming into her own, figuring out what she was doing, and just his compassion for it as well. You know, it's like, oh yeah, your lover is here in the underworld. I don't know how to feel about that, but I thought he handled it really well. So yeah, I thought he was sexy. I liked him.
Okay,
so.
all right. I should aim for like writing non-sexy characters and come out. But no, I did want him to be redeemable. I didn't want him to. Sorry, cats are fighting in the garden. Our cats. But yeah, I did want him to be redeemable. I didn't want him to be his brothers. Like, I needed there to be a very clear distinction between the vileness of Zeus and Poseidon against getting it wrong. Because it's another thing when I go into writing all of my books is, you know, they're always just immediately, okay, you're writing feminist retellings. I'm like, I'm writing retellings from the women's point of view because they have not been heard enough, in my opinion. But that doesn't mean that they are, you know, the anti-men ones and they are the pro-women. I have women that mess up all the time and women that get stuff right more often, and then I have the men who will mess stuff up and the men that will get stuff right. So it was so important with me that I had those redeemable male characters as well as the redeemable female ones.
Yeah. And I really liked to, I mean, Hades has kind of always stood apart from the mythology, like feminist retelling aside. He's always been a little different. Like, he doesn't go around, you know, screwing everything and popping up offspring everywhere. You know, having all these kinds of affairs. And Persephone is like his one person, even in the mythologies. You know, the origins of how that came to be are sketchy in the mythology. But, you know, the aftermath of it is that, you know, he is portrayed as a loyal husband. So I liked how you leaned into that with this a lot. I really, really liked it. I want to segue a little bit into the historical elements that you wove in. So particularly with the Greek feminine history elements. So you mentioned the gymnasium or gymnasium. I'm not 100% sure
I
how
go
to pronounce
gynoecium. I'm not great on my pronunciation.
gynoecium. It could be that. It could be that. Yeah, gynoecium. That sounds right. And just like some of the like cultural expectations and societal roles of ancient Greek women. When you were researching all of those things, like, did you discover anything that just kind of shocked you, or was there anything you discovered that you wanted to share with your readers in particular?
I think that the shocking was comparing how much they had to do with how little rights they had.
Mm.
That was like one of the most shocking elements, is just like, oh yeah, they have to run these households, they have to look after their children, they have to do all this, that, and that, but no, they don't have rights, no, they can't come to this festival or do this, it was really, yeah, really sort of jarring that the way they were used.
Mm-hmm.
Even as a wife, it had much meaning as perhaps you would think it would.
Yeah, that's really interesting. The scene you oh, am I frozen?
I think I might have freezingness.
It is a little robotic sounding. Oh no. Hopefully the technical difficulties work out. Me see if this works. Oh. Okay, hopefully she pops back on. While we are waiting for Hannah to come back on, just want to check out the chat. This would be a great time for our readers, our watchers, to post any questions in the chat. Let me see. There she is.
Was it me that was lost?
Yeah.
Oh, I was asking if it was me that was lost.
Oh no.
So I was like, can you tell me if it's me? Okay, I have no idea why that happened. Sorry about that. I am
No
back.
worries. Okay. Yay. Woo. Okay, so one scene in particular I was thinking about was the scene where she's at the palace and the queen there's a tragedy. I don't want to spoil anything, but there's a tragedy, and just like how quickly the women were expected to just move on from something like that. That was wild to me.
I know, right? But when you think about the number of children that they are expected, well, you've got lots,
Yeah,
you've got lots. Just
yeah, and
yes.
I feel like tragedy like that was very common.
Yeah.
Too, not necessarily in the way that this one happened, but just like the loss of a child or a daughter or a son was very, very common. I just cannot imagine like just having to pick back up, go sit at your loom and do your thing and just like wash it off or whatever. And I was just like, wow, like, but yeah, that was eye-opening to me in that scene. Was just like these women had to be tough, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. No, that was a scene, that character. I actually really like. I liked that character. I felt for her, and yes, that she just also had the space. She was, she wasn't going to be told not to grieve. Like that's where she was. Like there was no getting past that.
Yeah. Let's see. Okay, so here's a question. The festivals to Demeter and Persephone are mentioned from time to time throughout the story. Did you draw from the historical record when you were crafting these? And if so, what can you share about these rituals that you learned?
So yeah, I didn't put lots of the rituals and parts in. Really, I would use the times of years were the most important bit for me to get right. But there were, what surprised me most about let's get the pronunciation here right. Thesmophoria. Is it was the only festival that the women got to attend. Like, how bonkers is that?
That
was the one that the women could attend. They had to do all the cooking, all the arranging for all of them. But that was a festival that was for the women and the women alone. Which, yeah, felt like a special one as well for this book. It's like, yeah, Demeter, you deserve this. You after what you've been through, you deserve a festival where it is just women alone, and you don't have to worry about the men or the male gods who have caused you endless trauma.
Yeah. And that was a festival that happened once a year, twice a year?
So the main one, they have a 3-day festival to celebrate the harvest, but they did also celebrate the return of Persephone and the spring with a lesser festival then.
That's really cool how even in ancient times, like this mythology was about women, and like because like it's interesting because I feel like you can always put a male patriarchal spin on it, like like oh, like Zeus is responsible for restoring springtime or something, but it was like, nope, you guys are not tainting this mythology. Like this is a woman's story. This is about women, and women are going to celebrate
and
it.
That's yeah. Victory. I loved writing that. I loved going into it and Zeus thinking, well, I'm Zeus. I will have the power over this. And it's like, who's going to worship you when she has frozen every mortal? Like, let's think about this. Like, there's no food. They can't live. Who's going to worship you, Zeus? Like, you need to think about that a bit more clearly. So, yeah, I did enjoy writing the scenes of Demeter gaining her power and her confidence in her power. I think that's it. Like the power was there, just the same as Persephone. But the pair had to gain that confidence. And that's something that's always really fun to write, particularly with Demeter when you'd seen all this tragedy that she'd gone through before, to finally just stand up and go, no, you're not getting this. You're not getting your way.
Like just like the first, like the first strike, right, was Demeter. I used to think that the first strike was Achilles, but no. It was definitely Demeter. She went on strike. She was like, nope, we're not doing this. My demands will be met. I love that. But yeah, I love that the festival is like a celebration of women's victory in this critical thing of preserving family and preserving that mother-daughter relationship. It's like, yep, all the women are going to celebrate this. So that's really, really cool. I like that a lot. Cool. So that was all of the questions that I had. Did you have anything else you wanted to share about the story, about anything that you learned along the way, or
So I'm always learning so much when I write these, because I am not a classicist. I am a novelist who loves classics. So that's how I describe myself. And so the things that I learned, like I said, particularly about Demeter, writing through this, was it's you want everything in the books as well. There were other stories. I was actually my husband was listening to this on audiobook, and we've been lucky enough to get a most phenomenal narrator narrating this book. So if you're an audiobook listener, like, absolutely check that out. But there was one particular scene when Demeter loses her rag with the nymphs. And he hadn't been aware of that aspect of mythology. And we were driving in the car, and he got his headphones listening to it, but I knew he was near that point. And I just waited and waited. And then when it happened, he just turned to me, he's like, "What?" I was like, "You didn't know about that, did you?" He's like, "No." So that was a bit that I really loved, because and little stories like Helios's son, and I love weaving in these other little stories into the bigger picture, because I think they just add that depth of character.
I loved that too. And that's a good point that you brought up about the is it the harpies or the sirens?
The sirens.
The sirens. Yeah. That was interesting. Right? I had to look that up too, because I was like, wait a second. What? So I had a reaction like your husband did there.
Yeah, it was that was a good moment. So I love all those. I love the moments that make you go, what? So
So I sensed as I was reading, like, that you might have been opening the door for a Hera retelling. Was I picking up?
So, as you know, Hera has been done since then, as I'm sure you are aware, that Jennifer Saint has recently released Hera.
Yes.
I do have another retelling with the publishers at the minute. I'm waiting for edits on that. But once that one is done, there is another goddess who I am very keen to explore. Not Hera, but linked in a way, well, by Zeus and by husbandage. And Hera was not a fan of theirs. Let's put it that way. Was definitely not a fan.
Okay.
So that is one that I'm working on slowly at the minute.
Okay, that sounds awesome. So so anything else you want to share with us? I'm looking through the questions in the chat. We don't have any questions yet, but I want to open it up to any of our watchers. If you guys have any questions for Hannah Lynn about the book, about her writing process, anything at all.
Just fire books my way. Do fire books my way, but questions too would be great.
I actually do have a question. How long did it take you to write this book? Because I mean, there's some substance to this book. How long did this take you to write?
So it was about a year and a half before an editor could see it.
Okay.
And then probably another 10 months of back and forth.
Okay.
But I think one of the issues with my new book is it is big. It was 165,000 words, and the editor asked me to cut it down, and I tried, and I've just handed it over to her going, "You tell me where to cut it, because I can't work it out."
Can you split it into 2 books? Can you do a duology?
I asked that, but she said no.
What?
I know. We'll just have to wait and see. We'll have to wait and see what happens. So
I mean, there's plenty of like larger books out there.
I know. I have had several readers say that they will start a petition to make sure they can get the long version.
I will sign it. I will sign it. Send it my way. I will sign it. I want to read it.
Oh,
So.
I love it. Brilliant. Yeah, but it's they're good fun to write. They're well, they're not good fun to write. They can be quite stressful in sort of the dark nature of things that you're going through. But we have a question.
We do have a question. Can you see it?
I can. So, oh, thank you, Hannah. I'm so grateful that you enjoyed it. And I love hearing that it was read in a binge one sitting, because I am a binge reader, and that's what I aim for, is books that you just don't want to put down. So with me, with the sapphic element, is I just wanted her to be in love. That was the primary aim, was her finding a person who could see her for who she was, who could respect her for who she was, who wasn't intimidated by her being the goddess. And like I said, when I started to write this, I knew I wanted to have her wandering, exploring the lands and seeing this person, and that being the start of the relationship. And so when I was writing that, and it was Ione that she saw in the river, and that's where the relationship started, it did feel like a sort of naturally obvious, of course it's meant to be that, because she would understand the pressures on a woman, on the family obligations, even though it was different for a goddess, as for the mortal wife. She would sort of see that side of things. And also it allowed a chance to explore her life, from her being a widow, and then another wife as well, and then expected to have the children, and expected to move on with her husband's brother like it was normal. It allowed sort of that awareness of, you were saying about the women in that time as well there, so that it seemed to fit really well. Also, I didn't want a direct comparison to Hades. There's this man versus this man, and a lot of the time you do get that. There's which of the two dashing heroes, but the loves that are formed between in those two relationships are so very, very different. And the way Persephone deals with her grief as well was another important aspect that I wanted to be really distinct from how her mother dealt with her grief, which was another reason I wanted her to have love. I wanted her to have love and lose love, so that we could see, like you say, how that generational trauma is developed or changed, how she desperately didn't want to be like her mother in that. So I'm hoping that answered your question. I never know. I start rambling and it's like, did I answer the question? I could see it there. I hope I did.
That was a great question.
But also, sorry, I'm just going to say, when you're saying about what I think about other Persephone retellings with women, like, why the heck not? They're just relationships, they're relationships. They're relationships. There would have been sapphic relationships in Greek mythology times and times before there, and all the time. So let's just have them in books because they're there in life, That's how I feel about it.
See, Persephone choosing to forget Ione is really interesting in conversation with the lack of sapphic women. It scrolled.
Yeah, I do see what you mean. Like, almost as if she's not in the records, because and it really wasn't. I can see that it wasn't a sapphic forget, it was a love forget. That makes sense. Like, she had no other love. This was the big love of her life, but it was really that she did not want to be like her mother and controlled by grief. Like, that was the choosing to forget. That was it. I did actually give Ione a really harsh ending because of, and my editor came back and was like, it's too harsh. I was like, but I'm really mad at her. She's like, it's too harsh. So she actually gets a nicer ending now in the version that you've got that I gave her. As a mother, how realistic do you feel her anger is? Oh,
Ooh, I love that question.
yeah. Like, I feel her anger is 100% justified. Talking about an overbearing mum here, by the way, as I have pointed out. But yeah, I agree with this aren't encouraged to express anger. It's one of those things that isn't feminine, getting angry, is it? Like, whereas men, it's well, I'm sure I've seen a meme like one of these things where how come, you know, anger in men isn't considered being emotional, whereas, you know,
Right.
they do get angry or are perceived more often. And I would say, like, for me, one thing that really annoys me about myself as a person is I am a teary person. And that includes when I'm angry. Like,
Yeah.
I tear up
Me
if I'm
too.
angry, and it drives me up the wall. I am not sad. Like, when this something happened actually a few days ago, and I was so cross that I was teary. And there's this like assumption, oh, well, you know, you're all upset. I'm not upset. I am not upset. I am angry. And I think I wanted to give her that power because I know that whenever I try it, you know, for whatever reason, people look at the teary and it's, oh, you know, she's a woman. She's just upset.
Yeah. Oh, you're being sensitive.
Yes. And it's like, no, I'm not. I'm blooming furious and I will spit these words out at you. But yeah, so I really wanted it to be that anger that drives her through. And of course, there's sadness rooted in it. Of course, she's devastated. But that burning urge to get her back that's driving her on, the furiousness that this could possibly happen. And yeah, I like that question. Thank you.
Yeah, I like that question too. Very much moving through the stages of grief there. And like once you get to the anger stage, that's where the change happens. That's where you start to move on and like get, you know, traction on, you know, your life again, is when you get to that anger stage of the grief process. And I think Demeter definitely killed it.
And I think also with the
Literally
way
and figuratively.
killed a lot of them with it. I think also with the way that she handled things initially with her grief and her sadness, I think she saw it didn't work. You know,
Yeah.
the way she was on the island, it's like this hasn't achieved anything. And I think that was a realization, just like you said, moving through those stages of grief and suddenly being aware, right, I am going to change this. You need that. That's my thoughts.
Yeah. I love that.
Amazing.
All right. Any other questions out there?
Fire them across. I do like questions.
I'm going to put the QR code back up here briefly. If you click on this QR code, it takes us, it'll take you to SASA's bookshop.org, where 10% of all the proceeds go directly to support SASA and SASA's mission. So if you want to purchase a copy of Daughters of Olympus, you can, you know, kill two birds with one stone and support SASA by using this little link right here.
Definitely the way to go.
Yeah. And there are also, is this the right one? Yeah. So there's lots of other books in our book club section.
I've got a
well.
few. If I've got a few there. If you're, I can't really do the pointing, but oh.
Yep. Also, This Child is in our bookshop.org as well, which is also written by Hannah Lynn. Oh, let's see.
Have you got
another question?
Oh, yes. I can see up to the words emotions. Does it end on emotions?
Because it ends on emotions.
Yes, it's the bracket.
Let's see. In the Homeric hymn, it is definitely more focused on weddings. I am curious if moms feel these emotions when their daughters do marry. Granted, then it could be more arranged than today, but not having that rite of passage, how would that impact emotions? And there might be more to the question coming too.
I think there might be. If it's referencing the anger on the emotions, I do feel that it must be in some ways devastating for marriage to occur for your daughters. Depending on the situation, I'm sure everything would depend on the situation. But if you know how they have grown up and who they could grow up to be, and then you also know the possibility of marriage stifling that, of essentially forbidding it, forbidding those aspects of education, those aspects of freedom, then in those times, I think tears at weddings could absolutely just be, anger that they have to go through that they know generation after generation their daughters are going to have to go through that. And that doesn't necessarily mean that every marriage is going to end up, loveless and horrific, and there's not going to be joy in it, because of course there, hopefully there will always be some aspects, if that's through whatever hobbies or children they had, that they found their love. But because the mothers wouldn't have they wouldn't have any say in who it is their daughters are married off to, would they? Like, that would be a decision for the men.
Yeah, or at least minimal. I guess that would depend on what kind of like marriage the parents had.
Yeah.
And what kind of relationship.
Imagine many having says in it, and that is, I couldn't imagine how I would feel if I was told that my daughter was going to be marrying a man of dubious reputation. That would end up anger as well. Yeah, that would. Yeah. It's crazy, isn't it? It's
yeah.
We've
come a long way since then.
We have, but there is still way to come. Like that's what I was saying. Like with my book Athena's Child, you mentioned, like, I was talking at a book club last night, and I just said, when I was writing that, I was just like, how are there so many aspects that are still relevant today? How is it possible that we are still dealing with the same issues that we are dealing with today? And that was an anger that was making me write that book, without doubt.
Yeah, for sure.
That's a nice somber note.
I know, right? On that note, we are going to close out our book club discussion. Thank you so much, Hannah, for joining us again.
Thank you to everybody who's come along. I really, really appreciate it. And thank you for arranging it.
Yes, absolutely. Hope to see you again soon with another book.
I will definitely be here for the next one.
Awesome. Okay, take care.
Thank you. Bye.